the findings are fascinating, and they're coming in the wake of the Biden administration reopening the investigation into the origins of COVID-19 and the coronavirus. And as viewers know, this was triggered by the intelligence community coming back and saying we now have new evidence that requires us to have an open mind on how this virus came about. Up until now, the overriding view from the US intelligence community is that there's inconclusive evidence on both sides, whether this virus originated in a lab or whether it originated in a wet market in Wuhan. So the first question that we asked voters in the wake of the reopening of the investigation was, if it is shown that the virus originated within the Wuhan laboratory in question, would you support or oppose the US government taking some kind of an action towards China? So very open-ended, very, very broad. And there's unanimous consent amongst US voters that there should be some kind of an action. 83% said so. And the numbers, frankly, are in the 80s for any kind of demographic. 83% of Democrats support it. Slightly more independents support some kind of an action. Close to 9 in 10 Republican voters support some kind of an action. So, and this makes sense, right? Because the repercussions of this virus were very, very broad and very, very deep, with millions of lives lost on a global basis, and economies suffering the worst recessions in modern history, even worse than the Great Depression when it came to the United States, and the quarters in which the virus really affected the US economy. And so the data shows that voters want some kind of an action. When you ask them, what should the action be? An interesting picture emerges. And I would summarize the findings as voters wanting accountability without confrontation and without acrimony with China. And what I mean by that is that a majority in most cases prefer some kind of an economic action towards China, some kind of an economic action taken by the US government towards China. And what does that translate into? Fundamentally, about a third of voters would support some kind of a global tax on Chinese products to make up for the economic damage sustained in the world in 2020. Another quarter of voters, 25%, want China to pay reparations to the families of the dead or affected by coronavirus. Smaller numbers would impose, or 18% would impose travel and financial sanctions on senior leaders of the Chinese Communist Party who are believed to be responsible for the virus leak or for the management of the virus leak. 15% said do nothing, it was an accident. So they're just accepting of the fact that these viruses occur and have occurred historically. And a smaller number, 6%, said boycott the 2020 Beijing Winter Olympics, which is much more of an acrimonious action. And about 6% said other or specify, and in most cases, this group cited some kind of economic punishment towards China, but not more stricter actions or more bellicose actions. So the voters are very pragmatic. They're very well aware of the costs of the coronavirus and COVID-19. They want accountability if it is shown that the virus originated in the Wuhan virology lab. And this is important context within this origins conversation or discussion that's occurring within Washington and the United States, but also in many other capitals around the world.